Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio UFC 210 post-show. Dennis Grove here with Kasper Ozlowski. It is the 9th of April, and there is a lot of stuff to talk about on this episode.
Oh, there is a ton of things. UFC 210 just wrapped up, and I mean, what a crazy event. And we have some awesome, sexy guests to discuss this event with us, including Severe MMA's very own Sean Sheehan. He'll be jumping back on the program to give us a good breakdown. We'll be discussing the entire main card, and then afterwards, Robin Black himself of the Fight Network. He's there live in Buffalo on the scene, and he'll be talking to us about the aftermath and everything that went down and all the craziness from the event. And yeah, there's a lot to cover.
Yeah, a big episode to get to. And just a reminder for everybody out there, we will be back on our normal time slot of Wednesdays in Australia and Thursdays in America. And that's, of course, the 19th of April in Australia and the 18th in America. So that's something for you guys to think about. And also, while you're thinking about that, on the 18th here in Melbourne, Tuesday, the 18th of April, there is a big show of magnitude proportions. Of course, we just finished up our show with John Kavanagh over there in Sydney last Friday, and it is coming to Melbourne on the 18th of April. That's a Tuesday, and we're excited about it, aren't we, Cass?
Oh, yeah, a lot of fun. We'll be talking about our experience from the Sydney show later on in the show, just to wrap up. But yeah, Melbourne's coming just around the corner, and as per usual, we have some free tickets, some free double passes to give away, as this is the last episode before the actual show itself. So I'm going to read out a couple of sexy reviews. The first one is from the man by the name of George Midas, or George Midas from Australia. I'm not sure. It's just George. It doesn't really matter about the surname. George is getting a couple of double passes. I'll read you his review. Awesome podcast with a great variety of fighters and analysts on all the time. Dennis and Kasper always deliver the goods. Great job in covering all things MMA in Australia and New Zealand. Give them a listen. Keep up the great work, guys. Well, George, a fantastic review, and you are certainly being rewarded. So a double pass for yourself. You're off to the Melbourne show. And a man by the name of Boondy8. We don't even know his real name. He's just he's like a mystery, a myth. Boondy8. And I mean, how could we not give him the double pass? The review is titled Sexy Submission Radio. I love it because it's like the Joe Rogan experience. It's like powerful Joe Rogan, and then Submission Radio is Sexy Submission Radio. So it just works and it's fitting. So his review is: Dennis and Kasper bring one of the most unique, hilarious, informative, delicious, and downright sexy podcasts around, and they do it with a healthy doses of true blue Aussie banter. You won't find the carbon copy, clickbait-worthy, cookie-cutter questions from these lads. Just pure champagne comedy and genuine, insightful insights, in brackets, M. Goldberg reference, into the awesome world of MMA. If you want entertainment, A-grade interviews, and Timothy Johnson mustache movie reviews, then look no further. Seriously, Submission Radio, do it. That is far too kind than what we are worth, but we appreciate it, Boondy8, and we are showing our appreciation by giving you a double pass to the Melbourne show on Tuesday, 18th of April, to see John Kavanagh live. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you so much to everybody that entered. Thank you so much to everybody that gave fantastic reviews. But without further ado, enough time wasting. Now that we've got the housekeeping in order, there is so much to discuss on this episode, isn't there, Dennis? And I believe our first guest is on the line.
Our next guest needs very little introduction. You recognize him from some of the previous shows of Submission Radio. It's a great honor for us to welcome the man behind Severe MMA and a lot of great work on such websites like Sherdog.com, Sean Sheehan. Welcome back to Submission Radio. It's a pleasure to have you back on the program, man.
Thanks for having me, lads. I think every time you have me on, I think there's a bit of an insane card after going down or about to come up. So we're keeping the tradition going.
I know. I mean, 2017 has been a crazy year for UFC in terms of controversy in their pay-per-views, and this pay-per-view, UFC 210, has been no different. There's a bit to talk about, guys, and I'm going to jump off by kicking it off with the first fight on the main card. That was, of course, Charles Oliveira versus Will Brooks. Sean, I mean, what to say about this fight? An unbelievable finish by Charles Oliveira, really showing people what he can do with that amazing submission. What did you think about the way the fight played out up to that point, and what Will was how Will kind of looked in the beginning of that fight?
This, like so many other fights on the card, it was like backwards world at UFC 210, because it was the exact opposite of how I kind of thought it might go. Like, I thought Oliveira would have a chance of submitting him, all right, but I thought it might be after Brooks took him down. But the ease at which Oliveira took Will Brooks down was unbelievable. I just watched it back there again before we started. He took him down with a high body lock. Like, that's kind of unheard of against with kind of a jiu-jitsu guy who's not maybe known for his wrestling that much, although he has good takedowns sometimes, against a guy who's a very, very good solid wrestler and obviously an ex-Bellator champion. To get him down like that, it was just unbelievable. I never thought he'd do it. And once it got to the ground, Oliveira was obviously always going to be very, very dangerous, and maybe there was no surprise he got the choke. But I thought the way he dominated him for the first minute or two of the fight, got the fight to the ground, it was just unbelievable. Will Brooks I tweeted out just before the fight, I thought this was his time now to make a big splash in the UFC. As I mentioned, Bellator champion. He hasn't impressed that much since he came over to the UFC. Obviously lost one fight, and he looked, as you say, you're kind of alluding to there, looked kind of dead again coming into the octagon. Didn't really look up for it. It just doesn't look confident anymore, does he? And I think Oliveira kind of preyed on that, went over, took him down, and choked him out with ease.
Yeah, what about this for a record? Losing to two Oliveiras in a row. Alex Oliveira, of course, the one before, and now Charles Oliveira. Who knows, maybe we're going to find a third Oliveira and he set some kind of record. Casper, Fernando Prates translated the part that Oliveira said in that post-fight interview about how he's sort of looking to go back to the featherweight division and go for the title there. I mean, he looked great at this weight class. What would you like to see for him next? Do you agree with the sort of plans to go back down?
Not really. I mean, when you look at the guys he's lost to in the featherweight division, he lost to Cub Swanson, Frankie Edgar, Holloway, Anthony Pettis, and Ricardo Lamas. Those are all the top guys there. Obviously, Pettis has come back up to lightweight now, but I don't know what it is that makes him believe he'll have a lot more success there, let alone become the champ. So I think that lightweight's probably the best way for him to go about things in the future. I think he's kind of going to get the Calvin Gastelum treatment where, he did sort of beg Sean Shelby to, please, I don't want to stay in this weight class. I want to go back down to 145 and become the champ. I still think, and we spoke about this in the past, that he's obviously got phenomenal jiu-jitsu, but I mean, despite what we saw against Will Brooks, I don't know that he has the wrestling to really take down all the guys, the top guys, the elite guys, the McGregors, the Aldos, the Chad Mendes, the Edgars, and, really put in his game plan. I think he's got a better and a more fresh start here at lightweight, and I think that's where he should stay for now.
And he's had some issues cutting weight and all that kind of stuff before, so I don't know. It looks like a great home for him there at lightweight and a lot of momentum there. So we'll see what happens with him next.
And you mentioned that. Sorry, that's the other thing that I forgot about. He's missed weight 4 times in his career. And those were all in the UFC. So if he's saying that he wants to go back and be the champion, it's one thing to go back down and then have success, but I just don't see the UFC trusting him in a title fight not to miss weight and really hit that 145 mark if he's had trouble hitting 146. So I don't think that they're going to let him go down to featherweight at any time soon.
Well, a man that's had trouble making weight is a guy by the name of Thiago Alves, who defeated Patrick Cote in the next fight of the evening. I mean, this fight was a pretty good fight, back and forth. Cote had a lot of success here, Sean, and unfortunately sort of came forward with his face out, and Alves was really able to catch him with a couple of good shots there. Nevertheless, though, it was a good back and forth fight. I guess, what were your thoughts on Cote and his strategy here? Because he had a lot of success against Alves.
Yeah, to be honest, I thought Alves' strategy was actually very good. Before he was maybe a little bit, not too reliant, but he could be reliant on his athleticism and his strength and stuff coming up, up towards the fight with GSP and after. But I think he's a little bit further on now. He's getting a little bit old, maybe he's not as athletic or strong as he used to be. And now he has to fight differently. And I thought that he did very, very well tonight. Like, the leg kick is always there for him, but against a taller man, the leg kick is always a great option because there's no barrier you have to break down there to kick the leg. And when you're someone like Alves and the leg is there presented for you, that's the first thing you should want to do. And obviously it's one of the best things that he does, and he did it very well. So that led to Cote kind of not using his length and his size maybe as well as he would have wanted to, kind of, checking a lot of leg kicks, and it gave Alves not just the ability to kick the leg, but also to come in and land his jab and land his combinations after it. And you saw he knocked him down late in the first, had a lot of good shots landing in the second as well, and the third was probably the closest as well, but I thought he won that as well, although Cote came back and was very, very, very tough win for it in the third. But yeah, look, Cote, if you're looking back at the fight, what could Cote have done differently? Could he have tried to wrestle more? I think he did try to wrestle a lot, even in the third as well, when, push came to shove. He tried to do it, couldn't really get it going that much. He tried in the first couple of rounds, so I think he did try that. With his striking, he tried to use his length, it didn't work. He tried to fight up close, he got hurt by Alves. So I'm not sure what he could have done differently, to be honest. I was just very, very impressed with Thiago Alves and the way he fought. And especially when you've, the power like that, and maybe, back, obviously tried to get down to lightweight there, but back at welterweight, I think that's his proper weight. And 3 rounds, his gas tank looked very good, which maybe was a little bit of a problem in the past. And, very, very good display from him. And obviously a nice way obviously Cote went out and lost, but it was a good fight, for him to go out and then he can keep his head held high.
Yeah, and to me, one of the just basic things I think that really would have turned this fight around is, and Cote's style is not unorthodox, but he does have his own striking style. But one of the things I thought was, if he could have just got his hands up and not sort of rushed in with his face out in a couple of those moments, he probably could have avoided a couple of those shots that sort of put him down, because he was able to get Alves up against the fence multiple times and sort of start getting some momentum together, but he was just too open, and Alves was able to land something that it really sort of, obviously put a stamp on that round. Casper, a lot of people, not shocked, but a little bit surprised with Cote retiring. He is sort of at the tail end of his career. What was your reaction when you saw him take off the gloves and kind of put him there in the middle of the octagon?
I actually think it's the perfect time if you see the way the fight played out. And just quickly, on Thiago Alves, I also want to give props to him, because I think for the first half of that fight, his head movement looked really good, and just his style of keeping distance, his distance management, and sort of countering Cote. I think he did a beautiful job, and really for a guy to sort of be, up at this age and have so much mileage and still be improving is really impressive. And the other thing that sort of ties into Cote's retirement is Cote's chin. It just doesn't really look like what it used to be. He used to be able to take really, really big shots and keep coming, and we saw in the Cowboy fight he finally got knocked out, and then in this fight he got dropped multiple times. So when you see the way his career is going, obviously this is another loss. He's not really anywhere close to a title fight. He's got this job as French commentator for UFC events. I think it's a really good time to retire. He's had 34 career fights. He's 37 years old. He's taking damage that he didn't used to. I think he recognized the signs, and it's a very smart way to go out. So I was shocked. I certainly didn't expect it, but my props to Cote for what was essentially a great career. He had a lot of balls. He entered the UFC in spectacular fashion, didn't win, but came up against Tito Ortiz at light heavyweight, and here he is in 2017. That's a really, really long career, and when you are taking that much damage and have that many wars, I think it's a great time to retire.
Yeah, a lot of great moments for Cote, and I think it was a nice moment for him in that retirement. I feel like he got a nice post-fight speech, and it was a good moment. Even though he was going out on a loss, I saw on the social media a lot of fans really talking about some of the fun moments in his career, and he did fight a lot of big names, and people can think back to that fight with Anderson Silva where he had some success and hurt his knee, and other big names as a coach on the Ultimate Fighter down here and in the Australian version. So a lot of highlights in his career. But let's jump over to the next fight, the women's strawweight fight. Man, this fight, controversial. There was some controversy, obviously, with DC and the whole towel thing, but this fight as well, people thinking it wasn't going to happen because of the situation with the breast implants for Gonzalez. Of course, that was all cleared up, but there was a point there where she had to go out, do a press conference about it. The whole thing was just ridiculous from the get-go, but nevertheless, this fight made it to the card, which was good, and Cynthia Calvillo was able to defeat her. Casper, this was another great performance for Cynthia. Talk to us a little bit about what sort of you picked up and what was your reaction to such a successful, well-rounded win for her in this card?
Well, I like how she was adjust from the first round. Obviously, Gonzalez was going in there, I think, trying to shake off a bit of cage rush. She was coming off a year layoff, and Cynthia was going out there very hard. I think she was shocked by the way Gonzalez was so calm and really was just trying to defend, but she found openings in the guard and she came out blazing in the second round as well. Just completely smothered her with the grappling. I was very impressed. Whenever Gonzalez was trying to initiate scrambles, she was on top, but she had her legs just loose enough to where Gonzalez would move and sort of be her own enemy, and she would still be able to maintain top control, whether it was in mount. She'd be able to transition to back mount. In all fairness to Pearl, though, I mean, she did. Cynthia made her look like she was a step behind, but she had so much toughness, and I still think she won a lot of fans. And I feel like, you know, this whole breast implant situation, as ridiculous as it was, because obviously the commission knew about this beforehand, they made her way in, and then they brought it up. The whole situation was just ridiculous, but if anything, it brought more attention to the fight. I mean, it should definitely never have happened, but that is the silver lining, and I think a lot more people knew about who Pearl Gonzalez was and who she is now. Unfortunately, didn't go in her favor, but I think it sort of boosts Cynthia Calvillo even more. I will say, though, I think a lot of people are really high up on Cynthia at the moment. I think they expect her to get a massive push in the strawweight division. I think she should. I think she, you know, she's a really good prospect. She may be all that and more, but I think they need to be really slow with her because, again, she beat someone who I think, she's only had 5 fights, 5-0, and I think Pearl Gonzalez hasn't had much more fights than that. Like I said, coming off a year layoff and really just looked like she was a class below. So I think that while I'm curious to see what happens with Cynthia in the future, I don't think she should be ready for a ranked opponent just yet.
Sean, any names pop out at you as who could be next to Cynthia?
Yeah, there's a few. All right, I'm kind of with you there, and that maybe towards the ranked opponents. I think she should be ranked after this. I'm very, very high on Cynthia Calvillo. Like as you were saying there, those transitions on the ground, it was just unbelievable from such an inexperienced fighter, and we saw that in her last fight as well. What was it, on like 40 days ago or something like that? But I think we kind of know by now, you know, after those 2 fights, how good she is on the ground. But what I was ultra impressed with was her stand up in the first, you know, kind of round to second round as well. Because Pearl Gonzalez came out and, you know, she had that high guard and she was making it awkward. You know, it was a defensive wall basically she was bringing with kind of walking forward but not really taking any shots, and that's tough. That's very tough for an inexperienced person. As you said, what 5 fights in Calvillo is, and sometimes like people will like that. They go for takedowns. Maybe they give up their neck or they leave themselves too open and they get countered or something. But her footwork was just phenomenal. She was moving to the side, landing where the openings were, getting inside of Pearl Gonzalez's guard, which isn't easy to do. You know, even the most experienced of people can't do things like that. And I thought it was just brilliant. Obviously, when it went to the ground, then she just took over, and you know she had her in a triangle at the end of the first round. The bell saved Gonzalez, and obviously she got the rear naked choke in the third. Look, I think she can beat people up there in the top 10. You know, obviously Paige Van Zandt is ranked 11th now at the moment. Her teammate, I think she's better than Paige Van Zandt, to be honest. Marina Moroz, you know, the likes of Randa Marcos, I think they'd all be good fights for her, even so young in her career. But like I said, I think a new star is born. I think she could be a phenom. Now, I think she should be ranked, but I'm not sure about giving her someone that high up yet. You know, there's no rush with her, and I think, you know, people, you know, I said that, and people might get the wrong end of the stick or something. I don't want her rushed or anything, but I do think she is up there already. You know, she's phenomenal. You know, it's not the strongest division in the world, and she definitely is going to be up there in the next year or so as, you know, as a top contender, because you know, there's no stopping her if she keeps going the way she is. There's nobody's going to stop her, you know.
Well, I was going to say potentially maybe a fight with Felice Herrig, because she's someone with a well-known name, but she's outside the top 10. I think she's ranked around the 12th mark there, and it's something that's a good test for her, while at the same time giving her some credibility. If she does beat her, that could possibly be a fight that I'd be looking at if I was in the UFC. But again, I agree with you guys. Let's not rush her in the top 10. Let's let her enjoy this part of her career. Let's let her build some experience, and let's get fans to know her a bit more as well. I thought it was genius, though, that they put her on the main card. I mean, I think the UFC deserves some props for that. At least they're building some new stars. And with a card where people are retiring, it's nice to see a young up-and-comer on the main card, especially with all the retirements. Let's jump to the middleweight fight. I mean, this in the co-main event, I mean, this had a lot of controversy. There's a lot to break down. Before we get down to that controversy, I mean, to me, when I was watching this fight, guys, I thought Gegard was doing very, very well against Chris Weidman. Even though Chris was able to take him down a number of times, I thought Gegard was able to land some really nice strikes and was, in my book, sort of possibly on his way to winning this fight. Casper, what did you think of the initial performance from Gegard and Weidman before this whole hoo-ha happened?
Well, I mean, it was certainly a terrific fight while it lasted. Weidman came out, had a sense of urgency. It looked like he was trying to pressure Gegard while being very respectful of his striking. It looked like he was avoiding that really crisp jab of Mousasi. He was able to land takedowns with relative ease. There was a moment where he got a takedown, Gegard went for a guillotine, and just before Weidman finished the takedown, he sort of stuttered that takedown. Mousasi tried to put all his weight on Weidman's neck and expected Weidman to follow him on the ground, but Weidman sort of stopped midway, let Mousasi fall off, lost the guillotine, and then he followed it, completed the takedown. I thought that was a really genius moment. Mousasi was very good on the ground, though. I mean, his defense held up, and Weidman wasn't really successful in mounting much offense, even though he was taking him down. And then by the second round, Mousasi made a big comeback. He managed to hurt Weidman, and Weidman looked like, I'm not going to say that he was completely tiring himself out, but he was starting to look labored. He looked like he was breathing somewhat heavy, and it looked like all those takedown attempts and the attempts of keeping Mousasi down on the ground, they were having somewhat of an effect on him. I wouldn't go as far as to say that, Mousasi was necessarily on his way to winning the fight. At that point, I really still could have seen either man winning, even though Mousasi had Weidman in a bad position. He did land those knees, but yeah, and then out of nowhere, the whole fight just fell apart, and we had towel gate, we had breast implant gate, and then now we had knee gate. So it just kind of shat on the whole fight, and everything fell apart.
Yeah, the illegal knees. Okay, let's get into this, guys, because I think everybody's talking about this right now, and they're curious to hear our thoughts on what exactly happened. Sean, let's take it from this perspective first. We all saw what happened on the TV, so we didn't quite have Dan Magulada's, I suppose, view as it happened. In a perfect case scenario, if you're the referee of that fight, and again, you don't have slow motion in your brain, how do you handle that situation, in your opinion?
Well, to me, it looked illegal on the TV, and it obviously looked illegal to Dan Murgliata as well when it happened. So that's fine. Say we think it's an illegal knee, so we never saw the replays, which he shouldn't have seen. Nobody should have told him, looked at the replay and shown him the replay or talked about the replay and said that it was a legal knee. That should never have happened, right? Okay, if that was to happen, fair enough. If that was legal, but it's not legal. So he wasn't in that position. He stopped the fight because he thought it was an illegal knee. He gave him 5 minutes to recover. And then he just called the fight off and gave it to Mousasi. I thought that was just so weird. Like, I don't blame Dan for stopping it and giving him 5 minutes, but then to not allow him the chance to restart the fight and just to call it off and give it to Mousasi, I thought that was very, very odd. Like, fair enough. If the video technology was there, he could go out and he could look at it and say, "Look, I made a mistake. We'll just start the fight again," or whatever like that, or call it a no contest because he stopped the fight. Fair enough. But for him to make the mistake and then to give Mousasi the TKO win because they went and they looked at the television monitor, or whoever told him that it was a legal knee, and he gave him the win because it was a legal knee. I just don't think that's right. Weidman didn't want the fight to be stopped. Dan Murgliata is the one that went in there and stopped the fight and gave Weidman time to recover. Weidman didn't ask for time to recover. Weidman was still fighting. So I think Weidman can be very, very hard done by. Because okay, fair enough. There's a mistake. He made a mistake. The referee did, but then to make that mistake and then kind of half use technology that's not there to correct your mistake, but then realizing that, we can't use the technology, so I'm gonna have to just call this fight off now because I can't let him back because it wasn't an illegal knee. I thought it was just so weird. And look, it's easy to solve this. Just bring in the technology. Let Dan Murgliata go out, or let another referee outside tell him what happened, and then restart the fight. Have exact procedures for every situation, whether it's a no contest, whether you restart the fight, whether the other person wins, and just let there's in MMA all the time there's just confusion. and it's terrible. And we need to, there's lots of different things. We need to change it, and we need to have exact, rules and regulations everywhere. Not different things for every commission. We need it everywhere, I think.
I agree. I think it needs to be very unanimous. And you mentioned confusion in MMA. I think it's ridiculous that people have jobs and they have absolutely zero idea what they're doing. There's so much confusion. And you mentioned half using the technology, and a referee should have sort of, somebody outside external maybe should have watched the replay and given advice to Dan Miragliotta. And that's kind of what happened, because Big John McCarthy told him it was a legal knee. And then Miragliotta went in and he still was asking how much time. What's crazy is I think that Big John McCarthy, was the one telling him how much time. Actually, you know what? It probably would have been a timekeeper. But somebody was saying that there is still much more time. Why is there time if it was a legal knee? In an ideal world, there should have been a replay, an immediate replay. You see, all right, that was legal. The fight is back on immediately. Hands up, the fight is back on. Instead, we watched this ridiculous circus unfold. We saw these doctors, come in and call the fight off, and I don't think they should have. I don't think there was anything about the fight that, about Weidman that, made them believe that it should have been waved off. I will say, though, and I'm not trying to blame Weidman in this situation, but I do think he was stalling a little bit. I think that after those knees hit, you could see that Weidman was clearly aware. He knew about the hand positioning and everything. And then once Dan stopped it, he sort of, I don't want to say he's trying to milk it, but then he sort of covered up his face. It looked like he was trying to act a little bit. It looked like he was trying to stall. And I wasn't really convinced. And then when the doctors came in, I think he was milking it a little bit. But I think at the point where they started, really looking like they're considering stopping the fight, I think he should have really fought harder for it. I think he should have started yelling. We've, not like a maniacal man, but just saying, I'm fine, really trying to convince him. And I don't know that he was convincing enough. Again, it doesn't fall on him. This situation should have never happened. The real issue here is that New York, and a lot of people brought this up before 205, that basically New York has zero experience in officiating MMA events, and they have a ton of black stains and blunders as far as officiating boxing. I mean, it's crazy how we have Vegas, Nevada making so many mistakes, and they have been officiating MMA for years. And now we have this brand new state of New York, and we are seeing them learn before our very eyes. I understand there is a learning curve, but things like this, when you've got fighters and money and so much and rankings and potential titles and careers on the line, we shouldn't be seeing this ridiculous. Between that, the breast implants, the ridiculousness of Towelgate, I don't really have anything nice to say about the New York State Athletic Commission at the moment.
And one of the things I was thinking about is just the rule itself, how obviously it's legal if you got one hand down, both hands down, it's illegal. I mean, Sean, do you think this rule needs to be looked at? Because there will be other times where this happens and people won't be sure whether it's legal or not, because it's one of those spur of the second things that you need to watch on instant replay. Should there be a situation where it just becomes legal where you have both hands down?
I think it probably should be. The rule is there, and someone on Twitter mentioned it. The rule is there to protect a grounded fighter when you're actually down. You're not down if you're standing up and you have two hands. It just makes no sense to me, to be honest. And they change these rules, and they're kind of pointless rules, I think. And that rule basically just causes what we saw tonight, or what we saw in the Tim Means fight a few months ago. It just causes confusion. It's so weird. But the biggest problem with MMA is it's a very complicated sport, and the people in charge don't understand it. That's what the problem we have. The people bringing in the referees don't understand it. Some of the referees don't understand it. Some of the judges don't understand it. It's a huge problem. Very few people in MMA actually understand MMA, because it's kind of a thing you have to fall in love with, and you have to get obsessed with, like GSP talked about. You have to get obsessed with it to understand all the intricacies of it, because it's one of those sports. It's just, and most people don't understand it. And I feel sorry for Dan Miragliotta in a way, because it's a mistake to make when you're in there. It's a very easy mistake to make, but as I said, the procedures should be there. That is just second nature. You look in the rule book, this is what we do in this situation. But I can't see that happening, because the people in charge are stupid, and the people, implementing the rules are stupid. And, there's some great people there, like the likes of Herb Dean, John McCarthy, New Jersey, his name, I can't remember at the moment, Andy Foster, Mark Goddard in England. There's a lot of people, there's lots of people in Ireland as well. great people, but a lot of the people in the main ones, like New York, as you said, never had experience of them before. Nevada, just a bunch of idiots on the panel there doing it for the most part, and that's what we have in this sport. Like, and it's a shambles, I think, for the most part at the moment.
And you know what? Even Mark Ratner, every time they get him on the mic, I don't know why they do that. They put him up there. They put his name up, the VP of Regulatory Affairs, and he just sounds like a guy who's been woken up and has no idea what to say. It's every time he says something, it just sounds like he's guessing. It is incredibly frustrating. And there was something else that you mentioned. We were talking about this rule about the fingers down. Isn't it, when you look at it in a sort of broad perspective, isn't it just comical that we're looking at this replay and saying, all right, his fingers are touching the ground. He's got like half a fingernail on the ground. He's a downed opponent. He cannot defend himself. The fingernail's up. Now it's completely legal. When you look at it from that perspective, it's so ridiculous. I think they need to change the rule. Maybe something like if the knees are down, because I can't see too many situations where even if you have even if you're on all fours, you can defend yourself if you choose to. You can bend your arm, you can protect your face. Maybe if you're on the knees, it's a bit of a different story. But I think that should be the rule. That if you're on your knees, you're a downed opponent. Anything else, it's all fair game.
Yeah, and to me the thing with it is, obviously when you put a Muay Thai clinch on someone and start kneeing him in the head, it takes a lot of skill to get in that position. Well, if you've got someone in that position where they got their hands on the ground and you sort of got them in that position where you can start kneeing him in the head, to me that's an advantageous position that you work to get to. So I agree with you guys. I don't see it as a down opponent. I see, like you mentioned, Cass, you got the knees on the ground. All right. Maybe, and that's maybe a bit clearer to see as well. When you're talking about fingernails, and no one knows what it is until you have replay over and over and over and over, you got to change the rule. And they just got to keep doing that to the rules. Make sure that the rules are as clear as possible, because when you have these rules and they're set up for people to get in these situations where they literally do not know what to do because they don't have the eyesight of some kind of robot that can pause things and replay them in their mind, you got to change those rules to make it a bit clearer. So hopefully something like that happens. But look, the confusion and the confusing times continued in the main event between Daniel Cormier and Anthony Johnson. A lot of people talking about what Anthony Johnson was going to do in this fight, and then he sort of surprised people when he initiated a lot of grappling with DC. Sean, were you, like many people, surprised that he sort of went with this approach to this fight?
It was the biggest choke since Bunny Rabbit in 8 Mile, I think. It was. It really was. It was.
What was the biggest what? Sorry?
It was the biggest choke since Bunny Rabbit in 8 Mile. Remember the Eminem thing? Oh God! It was. I don't think I've ever seen someone in MMA shit the bed as badly as Anthony Johnson did in this fight. It was terrible. It was. I have no idea what he was doing. Like, Anthony Johnson, to win that fight, what should you do? You should go out. You should let your hands go, try to catch DC early and knock him out. As simple as that. He was wrestling him, putting him up against the cage, trying to take him down. Once he started doing that, and even though he hit him with a good head kick at one stage, but he went back for takedowns again, the fight was over. Because his gas has gone in. You saw DC like kneeing him to the body, taking away his gas tank little by little. Once that pop has gone from him, once DC gets him up against the fence, the fight's over, and it was easy for Cormier, really. It played into Cormier's hands. Johnson basically gave him the fight. He just, it was a total non-event. It was kind of like Bader against Anthony Johnson, where Bader kind of just went across the octagon, tried to get a takedown, couldn't get it, and the fight was over. Anthony Johnson just destroyed him. And that was it with Cormier, except there was no trying. He just went over, attempted to take him down, which was never going to happen. Got his back up against the fence, got DC against the fence for a while. That one break where he's kind of forced to throw the kicks, he looked more dangerous, and he went straight back to wrestling again. And DC got him against the second round, took him down, beat him up a little bit, and choked him out with ease. It was easy night's work for Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, it's brutal, and people that have been in grappling for a while will know that when you're grappling with someone, you could be grappling, let's say you're a white belt, you could be grappling a purple or a black belt. Just because you take them down, it doesn't mean anything. It's just the beginning of a painful, long night. And I mean, you could just see DC was waiting for the right opportunity. And then when he went for that choke, I mean, another bit of a disappointing situation was Anthony Johnson didn't protect his neck properly at all. He had his arms out. that was one of the things. Is like, oh no, he's spending all this time trying to take DC down, and then when DC's going for the choke, that he used against him last time, he's not even protecting his neck. He's got his hands out, almost like he forgot all about it. I mean, Casper, Sean gave us his reaction. I mean, do you want to sort of share your thoughts as you were watching this happen?
I was just as shocked as I think anybody else, and I think Sean covered it pretty well. I mean, we spoke about how the first fight, Rumble's energy, and it wasn't so much an issue of cardio, it was just being inefficient on the ground and doing all the wrong things. And you thought, well, if he can have more energy, maybe he can use that against Cormier and sort of last a little bit longer and have more chances in keeping the fight standing and, knock out Cormier. You're not going to win a grappling competition, a wrestling competition, anything to do with it against Cormier. And for him to actively do it, I mean, it was very weird. We saw Gegard Mousasi do that as well against Chris Weidman. This whole event, it was like bizarro world. And I don't know whether it had something to do with the fact that he knew that he was going to retire, and maybe that was playing on his mind. You would think that in a perfect world, he'd want to, retire as champion, but I also think that if you have this idea in your mind that you've got another job to go to, that can probably be a big distraction. We've spoken about it a lot of times where, if MMA is sort of all you have and you need to succeed in it, you're going to be extra hungry and you're going to push yourself in order to be successful, because really that's all you have. And I think in this case, Anthony knew that he had something else, and I don't know, maybe it looked to me like he was a man who wanted out. I don't like to say that fighters quit or anything like that, but really just when I watched that finishing sequence when DC did have him in a bad position, he was hitting him in the head and Rumble just wasn't defending at all, and I thought, wow, that's a lot of unanswered punches for Rumble to just not do anything and just lay there and accept it. And then the choke, I mean, it almost looked like Johnson was reaching to tap before the choke was barely locked in. So yeah, it's a big shame. He could have really gone out and capped off his career on a massive high. I don't think there's anything that you can take away from him in terms of losing to a phenomenal guy like DC, but I think that if he kept the fight standing and didn't really play into Cormier's hands, I mean, there were times where he threw these vicious punches and then caught himself so off balance that DC had no choice but to, take him down, and did it with ease. But it was more just like in the first fight where Johnson basically put himself in those positions. It wasn't just DC getting him there. So yeah, it's a massive shame.
It's crazy because from the few shots that he landed, it looked like he broke DC's nose. And that thing was on its side across his face. So I'm sitting on the corner. I'm looking at DC. I am not going, hey, I'm going to wrestle with this guy. I'm going to punch this guy in the nose a couple more times and finish the fight. So the whole thing was just bizarre. And Casper, you mentioned the retirement. I mean, Sean, what was your reaction to this very, very strange way of Anthony Johnson sort of calling it quits, looking for his coach? The coaches are gone. The whole situation, and Joe's asking him questions. He's looking for Henry. Then he announces the retirement. What was your reaction to that?
My reaction to that is kind of the reaction to every MMA retirement. Is like, oh, I wonder who he'll fight next. I just don't believe him ever, and I don't believe this. I don't believe he's actually retired, but I don't know. He probably got another job. How long will that last? People say, it's tough fighting, it's tough training and everything, but it's tough having a real job as well, where you don't get to spend, 2 or 3 hours in the gym every day, so I don't know. I'd be surprised if I didn't see him back again, but you never know. It could be another Cole Conrad situation where he says he's going to retire and he actually stays retired, or, it could be the endless amount of fighters, Tito Ortiz or Chael Sonnen or
Randy Couture.
Yeah, loads of them who down through the years who said they're going to retire and they always come back. So, yeah, it's it's hard to know. I suppose we give it 3 or 4 months and I suppose we'll know what happened. But after it, as you mentioned there, like it kind of did look like a display of a guy that maybe said, oh, I think I'll let Cormier have the title. I don't want the title. I don't want the burden of having the title anymore. And it did look like that. But when he was walking out as well, and after the whole Weidman Mousasi debacle, there was kind of an eerie silence in the arena as he was walking out. And it was so weird, and you could see it in his face, and those things do play into it. Like if you watch back that fight again, you mightn't see that when it happens, but at the actual time, it was so everyone was kind of still reeling from what had just happened, and that does play into it. These people are humans, like it plays into their emotions, and I don't know that maybe get them as well, but horrendous display, and I don't believe the retirement, but if he does, and if that makes him happy, fair play. I hope he does, because he's obviously a guy that's had a lot of problems in the past and a lot of demons to overcome, and maybe fighting isn't the best thing for him, and maybe he's realized that. But as I said, time will tell, I suppose.
And the fascinating thing about it is, I mean, he is arguably in his prime, 33 years old, you know, makes mistakes, but with what's happening in the light heavyweight division, you think, you know, maybe a lot more opportunities ahead of him, and him going, that really hurts the division. I mean, Ryan Bader's going to Bellator. Now he's going. If he doesn't return, I'm not sure exactly how that affects UFC matchmaking, because they could always rely on Anthony Johnson to come back and verse, I don't know, anybody in the division and do a crazy knockout. He was always a draw card for the UFC, and now that's another draw gone. So that happened there. Then we went on to the DC promo. Of course, we were laughing a little bit about WrestleMania before we started doing this show, Sean. Casper, what was your rating on the Daniel Cormier promo that included Jimmy Manuel and eventually made its way to John Jones, where Joe Rogan had to ask him what he means?
I like DC. I have absolutely nothing against DC. I know there's a lot of people that are sort of DC haters. I think that Cormier is he's a UFC fighter who's obviously a massive WWE fan, and he's trying to sort of live out his WWE dreams in the octagon. The only problem is that if you're in the WWE, like, you look at a guy like Chael Sonnen, he cuts these promos, and yes, people give him flack for it, but he really commits to the bit. Like, he believes everything that he says. It's almost eerie. You really, I mean, when he first started doing it, people were pinching themselves. People were like, does this guy really believe what's coming out of his mouth? And then because he's stuck to this bit, almost like a method actor, you know, bringing out the belt, saying that he's a champion, saying that he's undefeated, some people are actually falling for it. But the thing is, DC, when he cuts these promos, he always kind of laughs. He always kind of looks like he's having fun. And it doesn't really make sense to me when you're saying all these things and you're trying to trash talk someone, which normally when people are using the words that DC is using, they'd be very angry, they'd be very pissed off, very emotional, whereas DC's never really that. He kind of just looks like he's a guy who's having a lot of fun. So I think that's why a lot of people really don't like it, because it kind of seems like he's trying to get in their heads and he's not really succeeding. You know, I know a lot of people said, oh, DC's embracing the role, he's being the villain. He said things like, I'm making money, I'm winning belts, I don't really care. I think that deep down DC does really care. And I think that's why he's trying to trash talk. I think that's essentially his goal, is to get the fans on his side. But I think it's just amazing that John Jones, for everything that's happened, John Jones is still the good guy, and DC, who's an incredibly nice guy, is the heel. I mean, DC's going to have to really bring out his dark side and roll with this whole heel turn, because it doesn't seem like anybody's going to be cheering him anytime soon.
And the big mistake I reckon he made in this promo, whatever he was trying to do in that octagon, was when he said something about respecting John Jones and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's like, you're taking the steam. Yeah. Man, you're taking the steam out of this matchup. If he had said nothing, more people would have been excited about this matchup. Now he's giving them compliments, and it looks like, oh, we're all good kind of thing. I reckon that actually kind of hurt his potential matchup with John Jones and the build up to that. So if anything, he sort of killed it a little bit there. We didn't really touch on the future of Gegard Mousasi, so a little oversight that we have to get to as well before we wrap this thing up. Sean, I mean, this was the last fight on Gegard's contract, and going back to that weird fight that we spoke about with him and Chris Weidman, I mean, he said that he's open to a rematch, but he's also spoken about the fact that he wants the UFC to pay him more money. He wants to make more money. So if you're a betting man, do you see Gegard in the UFC in his next fight, or do you think there's a good chance that he's going over to Bellator, where his friend Scott Coker is running things?
I'd more likely say Bellator. I think usually with guys like that, you always hear rumblings. You know, with Vincent Henderson, with Josh Thompson, you know, there's always rumblings of Bellator just going to sign him when he finishes up his UFC contract. Now, that wasn't really there with Mousasi. You know, I think a lot of people put two and two together. Scott Coker guy, good friends with Scott Coker. He said he respects Scott Coker and everything like that, but I don't know. He just seems like a guy who the UFC wouldn't be breaking the bank for to keep, you know, because look at middleweight as well. Like, I was talking to a few people about this, and I just couldn't get up for this fight really, because for the winner, you know, Mousasi could be gone to Bellator if he wins. Weidman is not getting a title shot if he wins, and not getting near a title shot if he wins, because obviously we know Jacare and Whitaker are fighting next week. You have Romero in front of him, and you have Bisping fighting GSP. So, you know, the division is kind of all, you know, it's already gone in direction it's going to go for the next year. So it was a bit weird, and I think Mousasi, after that, the rematch is obviously something a lot of people want, and I hope they can make it. And I hope Mousasi does stay with the UFC, because he's improved an awful lot lately, and he's younger than Chris Weidman as well. I tweeted tonight, it was surprised a lot of people. So he's a good guy to have there, but I just can't see the UFC breaking the bank for him. And I think Bellator will. Bellator obviously had their middleweight title fight last night as well, and it was a rematch of a terrible fight, and it was a pretty good fight. And obviously Melvin Manlove lost to Carvalho, and I think Carvalho and Mousasi would be a good fight. And I think if they got Mousasi as their champion, they can sell a lot with him. They've gone into Holland, they've gone into Europe before. They've a lot of kickboxing around there. I'm sure they could put him headlining the MMA portion of a kickboxing card. So they see that, as money. Similar thing with Joseph Duffy. They could be signing him to a lot of steam in Ireland and in England as well. So I'd be surprised if he didn't end up in Bellator, to be honest. But if the UFC are willing to pay him the money, I think he'd rather stay there. But I don't think they will be.
And that's a crazy situation. And like a lot of props to Mousasi. You could see how frustrated he was. It was funny watching his corner celebrating, bringing in the flag, and he looked like he was telling him to fuck off. Like, get the fuck out of here. Don't you dare celebrate. Like, everybody put their hands down. This is not a happy moment. We are not happy about this victory. I thought that was funny and a pretty good move by Mousasi. I think with him, it's very genuine. He was very, very disappointed about, winning in that way. And I will say, the other thing that we didn't mention was it was so weird because I think initially Weidman thought he had won via disqualification, and then afterwards for him to find out that he had actually lost via TKO, that was a really heartbreaking moment. I think if ever there was a time to do a rematch, I think this is the time. The middleweight division is so clogged. We have no idea what's going on. You got Jacare and Robert Whittaker fighting. You've got sort of Rockhold in limbo. You got Yoel Romero, who should be fighting for a title now. I think if these guys, and really neither one of those guys are going to be fighting for the title next, so if these guys do a rematch, it just works perfectly. I think it's still a really intriguing fight. I was really enjoying it right up until the fuckery happened. So I would love to see a rematch between those guys. And while we're talking about what's next, I found it interesting, circling back to DC, that he basically said that John Jones needs to get his shit together before he fights DC. I don't believe that at all. I think that, like you mentioned, Dennis, with this light heavyweight division just seemingly teetering and a massive part of it in Anthony Johnson exiting stage right, the biggest thing that's going on in that division is this DC-John Jones rivalry. And I don't think the UFC, if they're smart, would do anything to jeopardize that. I think for the moment, regardless if Alexander Gustafsson destroys Glover Teixeira, you don't do DC Gustafsson 2 in the meantime, or Gustafsson John Jones 2, or give DC Mano or anything like that. If the DC John Jones rivalry falls through, then I mean, it's almost like all hope is lost. So I think ideally you see them fight at International Fight Week. It just really depends whether that's enough time for DC to recover. He had that brutal weight cut, a lot of dodginess happening there, and for him to be fighting again in about 2.5 months, I don't know if DC's even ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, this is probably the best thing UFC has going for them, apart from the GSP Bisping thing. So who knows? Maybe the paycheck, the amount of money he'll make, and the fact that he is getting a bit older and he doesn't have many big fights left, maybe that will encourage him to get ready for those 2.5 months. But if that nose is messed up and he needs to go in and have surgery on it, I have bad news for everyone, because nose surgeries take a while to heal up. He may not be ready in time at all. Yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy time in MMA. Before we wrap up, guys, Uriah Faber announced as an inductee for the International Fight Week, the Hall of Fame, Submission Radio alumni. Was very happy to see this happen. Sean, as your final thoughts, what did you think when you saw Uriah was making it into the Hall of Fame this year?
I was a bit surprised, to be honest, that it was Uriah so quickly. Usually it's someone from, a bit further back, maybe wait a few years, because, as I say, with retirements, Uriah could be fighting again in a couple of months' time, so you never know. But he seems like a guy who went out at the top, and we'll see out. But he definitely deserves it. Obviously he didn't get the success in the UFC, which he had previous to that in the WEC. But I think you have to acknowledge that the WEC was the world champion for, the bantamweights and the featherweights back then when he was the world champion. And, fighting guys obviously like Dominic Cruz, like, Bibiano Fernandez, Jeff Kern, Jens Pulver, Mike Brown, Jose Aldo, back in the day when he probably wasn't getting paid that much for it in the WEC. And everything he did get paid, he invested and he put it in, and he was he's this modern classic professional that you should strive to be. A guy who, elongated his career by, not only what he did inside the octagon, but what he did outside of it as well. And I think, just a fantastic fighter, great guy by all accounts. Bringing along the next raft of fighters as well, like Calvillo tonight we were talking about, Cody Garbrandt, obviously TJ Dillashaw as well before, the next batch of coaches as well and everything like that. Just, a phenomenal guy, great fighter, a guy that, fought till the very last moment, went out, fought in his last, couple of fights, Dominic Cruz, Jimmy Rivera up near the top, and Brad Pickett as well. And, Frankie Edgar up a weight as well, and not too long before that. So, hats off to Uriah Faber, great career and much deserving of going into the UFC Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Submission Radio alumni, great guy, and can't wait to see that moment for him over there. Hopefully they allow people to record it so we could see his speech. Guys, make sure to follow Sean Sheehan on Twitter at Sean Sheehan BA. Of course, Severe MMA is the podcast you need to listen to. There's enough room for many podcasts on your phone. Submission Radio, Severe MMA, a lot of great ones out there to listen to. Make sure you check those guys out. They do an amazing job over there. UFC 208 had plenty of controversy. Holly Holm, Darren Darmy, 209. Khabib doesn't make it against Tony Ferguson in that main event. And now 210 and everything that's happened. The UFC are having a little bit of a rough year. And Sean, we appreciate you coming on this year and sort of breaking down a lot of that. Thank you so much for coming onto the program.
Love being on, lads. Thanks for having me.
This is Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is one of the best MMA analysts out there. You recognize him from his amazing work on the Fight Network, and he joins us here live from Buffalo, New York. Robin Black, welcome back to Submission Radio.
Hey, guys. It's always good hanging out with you guys. I'm in Buffalo, and the fights were insane, and I'm just glad to take 15 minutes and hang with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, give us, you're in Buffalo, you're there on the scene. How would you describe this event as a whole? Before we get into DC and Rumble, before we get into Weidman and Mousasi, what do you make of this crazy circus that was UFC 210?
I mean, when you look at the basics, the beginning of it, you've got a packed house full of crazy fight fans in a great city going mental. So it's a good place to start, And everybody had, there was good vibes all around. You felt a little bad for Patrick Cote, but he also had a great career, and as Canadians, we love him. So, everything was kind of humming along. But then when the weird kind of moments that were Mousasi and Weidman happened, and the whole thing had a real weird flavor to it. But for my money, I'm not one of these people who's like, this was good, this was bad. It's all part of the weird journey that is fighting, It's all part of the story and the drama. And when people often talk about, and I know that it's part of it. I don't live in a bubble. I don't live in the bubble of where only interesting, technical analysis matters. I know that people like all kinds of stuff. But when they talk about drama and storyline, they often talk about who, is fighting who or who said what. But there is drama and storyline to the living, breathing thing that is the fight itself. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And in this fight case, it has its own tale. It moves the way that it moves, and it unfolded the way that it unfolded. The sad part is that, people other than the fighters affect the outcome. That's where I always have, less enjoyment of the fight, is when a ref or the judges or some kind of weird thing affects it. But it is just part of it. There's nothing you can do about it. It is an undeniable part of a fight, is that there are these crazy variables.
Yeah, and crazy is the word for it. Just quickly, what do you think should have been done in that situation? How would you have liked the situation to be resolved? Because it's a difficult one. Dan doesn't have instant replay in his head, so how do you go about it? Well,
the weird ones are the ones where a number of variables go good, bad, or awry. So, but it's when they get compounded that it's hard to figure out. But the first error is probably the least egregious of all, and that is that the ref thought that it was an illegal knee. Now, replays, which are irrelevant because we don't use replays in this sport, but replays may show that to be wrong. But what you need to do is take the reality of what is happening and go from that reality. So, human error says that it was an illegal knee. Well, we have to move with that, as we now have to take that as the new truth and move with that. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. If we said, okay, the ref stopped the action because of an illegal knee, and now we move on, if Chris can't continue or something happens or the doctor won't let him or any of that, then, well, it was an illegal knee. It's either a disqualification or a no contest, depending on the rules. But what happened instead was that referee perceived illegal knee led to a bunch of doctors who really don't know much about sports because they're in a new commission. A second doctor comes in. They start performing what appeared to be a roadside sobriety test on poor Chris Weidman. You know, like, if you think you have to ask whether or not he can balance on one foot, you stop the fucking fight. If you are uncertain enough that you're using follow-up criteria to see whether or not this brilliant athlete is concussed, you stop the fucking fight. You don't embarrass him in front of all these people. So there are a lot of things went wrong. Ultimately, whether it's legal or illegal, the ref thought it was illegal. We must act as if. That's what the rules say. So it should be it'll end up being a no contest if there's fair, if there's justice in the world. I don't know that there always is in this world, but it should be a no contest in the end. And Chris hopefully takes 8 or 10 or 12 months off and comes back and regains his place as one of the great fighters in the world.
Well, what I'm wondering is, what was the aftermath like there? Because you're there on the scene. Is there anything else, any other sort of new developments, anything that you noticed, maybe from Mousasi, maybe from Weidman? Was there any talks to any officials, anything that you can tell us?
Oh, I was right in the meat of it. So I go over because Ray Longo's a friend and a fan of analysis work, and we got to know each other. So I go to talk to Matt Serra, Ray Longo, and Mark Henry, who are obviously angered at the whole thing. They're angered at the scenario. They're angered at the doctors. They're angered at the commission, because you would be. And, they feel for their guy. During that time, we're discussing it, and they have most of my opinion here that I've just expressed, I expressed to them, and they seem to agree. Once you decide that you stopped it because it was an illegal knee, so why, you must act as if that is the case, and you don't go back. There are no instant replays in the sport, etc. So anyways, we're dealing with that. And then along comes Gegard and his team, who, one by one, and I've seen this before, this is, done by many high-quality coaches and fighters. They, one by one in a line, stopped, apologized, were incredibly polite, said their story went that way, and shook hands with each member, including myself, who just happened to be standing there. And now Gegard, which was, and they meant it. And it's an expression of the martial arts code, and it was very nice to see, and I felt fortunate to be able to witness and share in that. Now, later, Gegard has, he, I think, likes to express himself, understands the pliability of truth as it's shared in media today, and how the way that you tell stories affects your income and public perception and stuff. So we'll see him on camera, and I was there to witness it, saying, a win's a win, and a number of other things. But when I watched that gentle martial artist express, his, sorriness for what took place in that scenario, to each member of the team, one at a time with a heartfelt handshake, that's the real guy, and that's the team's real opinion of the scenario, and both teams shared that together.
Just quickly, before we move on to the main event, do you see him sticking around the UFC, or do you think this might be the last time we see him fighting for the organization?
Weidman or Mousasi?
Mousasi.
That's a real tough question, but the greats, I think, want to fight the best, and Mousasi wants to fight the best. So if the right deal can be made, I think you'll see Mousasi 100% in the UFC. A guy like Mousasi wants to fight Luke Rockhold. He wants to fight Weidman again. He wants to fight Jacare again. He wants to fight Bisping. He wants to fight all of these top guys. And if he doesn't fight in the UFC, he won't get the chance to do that. He's still young, and he still believes he's the best fighter in the world. And he very well might be. And the only way he's going to find that out is if he stays in the UFC.
Well, we don't have a lot of time with you, Robin, so we got to get to the main event. I mean, what a crazy main event. And we spoke about this just before on the show, but wanted to get your thoughts as well. The general consensus is that Anthony Rumble Johnson, I mean, the game plan was questionable to say the least, wanting to grapple with Daniel Cormier. What did you make of that situation? And then, of course, the impromptu out-of-nowhere retirement afterwards.
Yeah, so it's a really cool thing for me to be able to chat with a lot of these top fighters and coaches during and after. And over the years, I've got to know some of them, and some of them appreciate my contributions, and they share some things with me. And, Luke Rockhold's perspective of the situation when we were chatting after was that AJ, under duress, just took away space because space is where the chaos lies. Now, that's my saying, not Rockhold. But space is where the chaos lies. And when you're stressed out, you try to take that away. Now, that was the goal. That was DC's goal. He wanted to take away the space and get into a chest-to-chest wrestling scenario. And AJ, under duress, just handed him that. And Luke said that DC was very nervous, but he could see all the nerves disappear the second they started wrestling, kind of almost thinking to himself, oh, we're doing this. Cool. I know how to do this, And so he said that it just played right into DC's hands, as we all kind of would believe it does. Now, I tend to agree with Luke on that, but there are two main possibilities. One is that Anthony Johnson had no desire to wrestle with Daniel Cormier and did it under duress, despite the fact that he had no plans to do so. Or the other is he planned to do that. And what would be the reasoning that Anthony Johnson would commit to wrestling Daniel Cormier? Well, there's many of them, including it would be surprising. He had been focusing on that and had built true confidence in that. And the fact that he was able to take Cormier down twice, now one of them was about a second after the bell, or maybe even three times, because I believe he took him down in the second round as well. So it showed that he really came there, may have come there to wrestle. The other thing is, if you really get Cormier biting on Anthony Johnson, he's trying to take me down, that is a very real threat. That will help open up the possibilities of other options, elbows, striking out of the clinch, opens up your open field striking. It could open up a lot of things. So that is a possibility. Maybe he actually came there planning to do that. I think that would be a huge risk, because in wrestling, you put yourself into all kinds of, it isn't just I failed to get the takedown. In failing to get the takedown, you compromise your own position, and you may end up with Daniel Cormier's sternum on the back of your head and your face on the mat, and you don't want that. So he either planned it or he didn't plan it. If he didn't plan it, it happened because of stress, and if he did plan it, he got what he wanted and it didn't work. Either way, he was really disappointed. And he said very clearly after, and I think you'll probably see this coming out tomorrow because he said it a number of times, that he had intended to retire, win or lose, and he had intended that for weeks. And in fact, a while back when people asked about him ever fighting John Jones, and he said, no, I don't think I'll ever fight John Jones. He said even whenever that was because he knew he was going to retire, win or lose in this fight.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people were shocked all over the world when that happened. What's next? What would you say would be next for Daniel Cormier? I mean, it looks like his nose was hurt during this fight. A lot of people are pointing to a potential fight with John Jones during International Fight Week for the big card. But is that what you're thinking next? Is the turnaround an amount of time that's likely for DC to be ready for a fight with John Jones? Do you think it's likely that that's what's happening for him next?
I think, first of all, the only fight, if I'm closing in on 40-year-old Daniel Cormier, who has beaten the best guys in the world, been the champion, defended the belt, et cetera, the only real fight to make is avenge the one loss you had and beat the one guy that in your era people think is better than you. The only fight you want. If you're John Jones, I think it's also the only fight you want. You just want to fight for the title, and you don't like that guy. I mean, it's perfect. And the UFC, it's the only fight at 205 pounds that you want because people want to see it. And for us, the audience, the fans, we love it. So I think you make it. And I think if I'm Cormier, as much as he enjoys time off and like any normal human, he's in shape. You know, it's hard for him to cut down that weight. It's hard for him to get back into shape. So why get back into shape? Why not stay in shape? So I like it. Sooner than later for him if he's not injured. International Fight Week. I like the fight. I like the fight for every party involved, and I like it sooner than later. So, I could be wrong. Cormier might say, "Oh man, I don't want to fight for 6 months," but it makes sense to just do it now. And then if you win, bow out if you want. You've avenged the only loss you ever had. You're the champ, and sayonara.
All right. Well,
and I say that because we're kind of on a retirement kick today.
Yeah. I mean, I thought maybe one of the reasons why he might be looking at, say, Manuel or some of these other guys is, while he's champion, make those pay-per-view points, get some more money, and then cap it off with John Jones. But I think you make a stellar case. So, DC, if you're listening, and let's be honest, of course he is, make Robin Black happy, make us happy, make everybody happy, and just do the fight on July 8th against John Jones. But there he is, guys. Robin Black, the amazing analyst that he is on the Fight Network. We know you just did some shooting now, Robin. You just did some, you basically just wrapped,
yep.
So we know some great stuff is coming out from you momentarily. Don't forget to follow the man on Twitter at Robin Black MMA. And Robin, from the bottom of our hearts, It is always a pleasure having you on the program. You're welcome anytime. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, guys. It's my pleasure. And make sure you check out my new YouTube channel. I've got, in the last 30 days, I put up 40 pieces of talk about fighting and analysis and life, and I'm having a great time. And I'm heading to Moscow on Wednesday to discuss doing 12 to 15 pieces of commentary, commentating 12 to 15 cards for ACB in Russia.
Wow.
I'm pretty excited. I'll tell you guys about it in a couple of weeks.
That's amazing. And just quickly, I didn't know you had a YouTube channel. We're not talking about the Fight Network. We're talking about your one. Is that correct?
No. Yeah. I know you guys are halfway across the world, but just under 30 days ago, Fight Network shut down production of the kind of content that I made.
Wow.
So 3 days later, I started a YouTube channel. I have 7,000 subscribers.
Nice.
And we have 100,000 views. And it's been going pretty cool. Go check it out, please.
Awesome.
I think if you go on YouTube and put in my name, it'll be one of the first couple things that pops up.
Awesome. You've risen like a phoenix. Thank you so much, Robin. We'll let you go. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye.
Hey, this is Tony Okagui Ferguson, and you guys listen to Submission Radio. Keep tuning in, guys.
All right, guys, before we wrap up the show and right off into the sunset, and believe me, it'll be nice to see some sunset because it is rainy and cold here in Melbourne. We want to talk to you guys about a fun experience that we had with John Kavanagh doing the show with him in Sydney. That was, of course, last Friday. We had a lot of fun over there with the whole crowd. A big turnout, a big Irish turnout over in Sydney, around 700, 800 people at the Star Event Centre. Casper, it was a different experience for us from the get-go.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, this is 2 days ago. I'm still coming down from it. I'm still drained from it. I still haven't fully recovered from it. This is something that we've never done before. I mean, here where we are now, just recording, there's really zero pressure. It's all pre-recorded. There's no crowd. We're not live. We don't have to worry about anything. So going out in front of a stage, I mean, not that we were performing, we were sitting on the couch talking, but doing all of that, basically no safety net, it was a really different experience. And I'm not going to be honest, like at the moment now that we're doing it, I have zero pressure right now. But when the whole of Friday, basically, I was so nervous. I was like Eminem in 8 Mile before he battle raps the first time where he's like puking in the toilet. There was no vomiting or anything like that, but I was so nervous. And the production of everything was just a whole nother level. A massive hat tip to Arena Entertainment, who did a really, really phenomenal job in taking care of us and making sure that everything ran smoothly. But, I mean, literally, we were standing backstage and there were audio guys with the headsets and everything. And they were like, all right, they're coming down in 30 seconds. And you think like, holy shit, 30 seconds. I have no idea what I'm going to say. And then they're like, all right, and they give you the wave and your mic's alive. So yeah, it was crazy to say the least.
Yeah, it was lovely getting to know John. We grabbed a nice lunch, had a bit of a chat, got to know him on a more personal level, which I think really helped before the show. But me and you, we like to prepare. We had a bunch of topics we wanted to cover with him. 5 pages of topics, in fact. And then when we got out there, we were supposed to have a chat with him for an hour and then do a Q&A. But we decided altogether to combine that into sort of one thing. We were out there for pretty much 2 hours and really kind of covered a couple of topics, which I guess is exciting, because we've got the show coming up in Melbourne, and I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of different fun things. But one of the highlights that happened in Sydney, which won't be replicated in Melbourne, that we can kind of talk about, is getting John Kavanagh to try Vegemite for the very first time on stage. Now, Casper, I believe you fed it to him, so do you want to sort of set the scene for the listeners?
Oh, yeah, it was very erotic. Well, we spoke about it at lunch that day. We kind of mentioned, like, hey, John, we're thinking about doing this whole Vegemite bit, and he's like, yeah, look, I've never had it. We were like, all right, excellent, good, that's going to work really well. And so we were sort of discussing how we were going to do it. He just kind of, like, said, all right, I'm down for it, we'll do it. And then we thought, well, do we make, like, 200 Vegemite sandwiches and reveal it like it's Iron Chef and it's really crazy and overwhelming? And then we thought maybe we'll just give him, like, a massive spoonful. One of the producers or the promoters was like, you know what? You might really fuck him up with this Vegemite, because if you do it at the start of the interview, he's just going to have the taste in his mouth for the whole thing and he might be really distracted. And we thought, yeah, that's a good point. But then we thought, YOLO, so then we did it anyway, and yeah, he was a real sport about it, and we were talking about it afterwards, and we were like, what did you think? We hope you weren't too on the spot. And he's like, yeah, nah, look, it was alright, it was all well and good fun. And then you and me even had a spoonful each as well, and yeah, still recovering from that.
All that capped off by a Macca's run after the show altogether. And just to ease everybody's minds, John did not partake in the action, reminding us of the importance of a healthy diet and eating everything in moderation. Something that I think I might kick off this week, Casper, as I restart my diet for the 27th time in 2017.
Yeah, I don't know about this week for me. I think it's like a to be, for me it's like the John Jones Daniel Cormier rematch. It just keeps getting put off, and it's like, yeah, maybe in the summer, and then the summer comes and you're like, winter's looking better. Maybe I feel like Daniel Cormier is going to come out and be like, Casper, get your shit together. And I'll be like, no. There'll be no getting together of the shit. So, yeah. But all in all, I mean, this is an unforgettable experience. You know what else is crazy? When we went out on stage and we first saw all those people, first of all, it's like, wow, there are really a lot of people here. I think there was like over 800 people there. Definitely something that we weren't used to. And the other thing that was really tough is, like, you've got the light in your eyes, you can't see anybody. That was kind of scary because, we're saying things, we're talking, but you literally can't make out any faces in the beginning. So you don't know how the crowd's reacting, you don't know what they're saying. So yeah, this is I think the Melbourne show will be even better now that we've done it once. But yeah, this is an amazing experience.
Yeah, and of course the Melbourne show, if you guys don't need another reminder, will be on Tuesday the 18th this month. So if you are in Melbourne, you want to check out us and John Kavanagh, have a bit of a fun time. It's sort of like a fun time on stage. We laugh, he shares stories, jokes. You're able to go in there, ask him your questions. It's a really, really fun experience, and it's in a great venue, Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre, which is going to make it even more comfortable for you guys. You can jump on and you can grab those tickets on Eventbrite, of course. Lots of links shared every time we sort of talk about it. And we can't wait to finish this off in, I suppose, our hometown of Melbourne and kind of mix it up a little bit. I mean, we haven't discussed it yet, but who knows what's going to happen over there. So get down there. It'd be great to see you guys.
Yeah, we do apologize. In Sydney, we didn't really get a chance to meet anyone or see anyone. We weren't really sure how everything was going to work after the event. For some reason, we had in mind that, like, there was going to be some kind of, like, after party, or there was going to be, like, a bar that everybody would go to. And we thought, oh, yeah, cool, we'll be able to mingle with everyone. But afterwards, I think just a lot of people left. We sort of went backstage. John had his meet and greet to do, and he was obviously there doing that for a while. So we just kind of hung out in the back and sort of waited for him. And then yeah, afterwards everybody kind of disappeared. It was a mass exodus. We thought, oh well, that's kind of the end of that. So we felt a little bit bad because there was a lot of you guys, especially the competition winners, that we were looking forward to meeting, but it didn't happen. Hopefully, no promises, but hopefully that happens in Melbourne. And if not, well, we live in Melbourne, so everyone can just come down to our house afterwards.
That's right. First beer on us, and maybe some Dancing in the Moonlight. That's my party song. Dancing in the Moonlight. I like to imagine it like that. The parties never quite finish up like that. But with that, I mean, guys, what a UFC 210. What an event. Lots to talk about. Thanks for joining us. Of course, we're back at our usual time of next Wednesday. That's, of course, going to be Wednesday, the 19th of April in Australia, and, of course, the 20th in America. Thank you so much for joining us. Big thanks to our guests, Sean Sheehan. I mean, it's so much fun having Sean on the program, Cass. He's a wealth of knowledge, coming on to talk about some of these crucial times in the crazy world of MMA, and we always appreciate it and always have a lot of fun with him. And, of course, our other guest, Robin Black, for his analysis and sort of making things make sense to us this week with this crazy card of 210 and giving us his thoughts and perspectives. I think Old listeners really appreciate it, and so did we. And with that, we bid you adios and see you guys next time. Have a safe week, and thanks for tuning in.